Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and it is time for Friday Reads on December 15th. We are right in the middle of the month, and what a good month it is. We had a really nice week this past week. I didn't have a ton of reading time in the first part of the week because my daughter was here. As I mentioned last time, Emma came for a few days. Her semester ended, she came, we did a lot of fun stuff. Then she went back because she has to tend to the cells in the lab on the project she's working on, but then she's going to come back Christmas week. But we did a lot of good stuff. If this video is not too long, I will put a little bit of footage about our trip to the aquarium. We did a lot of fun things. We did a bunch of thrifting, vintage shopping. We went to the beach because it was warm, and then it got chilly. We went to the aquarium and just had some good times, and then we have some things we're saving for when she comes back. Also, I have recreated some of my tea footage that I accidentally deleted last week and have a little thing about my advent calendar and the tea at the end. I'm going to put that in for sure, and then I may or may not put the aquarium stuff, or I might save it for next time. So anyway, it's been a good week. I did kind of throw my back out a couple of days ago, not all the way. Like, I've had that full-on really bad time, where you have to get prescription meds. It wasn't that bad, and it's getting better, but I'm probably going to stop and get up a bunch of times and walk around, because just sitting in one spot too long is not a happy situation right now. But anyway, it's been a pretty good week here. So TV shows, we kind of took a hiatus when we had company because Emma Grace isn't watching those particular shows we've been watching. What did we saw a movie? Oh, we watched the Muppets Christmas Carol, which of course is one of the most faithful renditions of Charles Dickens' classic works. And then we've gone back to watching Fargo, which is quite good this season. And I think there's one episode left of Murder at the End of the World. Is that what it's called? And then we've watched some of the holiday baking things, the British Bake Off Christmas and New Year's special, and also the American one on Roku. And yeah, that's about it. I think we need to start another new show. We might start watching the new season of Slow Horses. We'll see. So the books. There's one main book that I read this week because I did not have as much reading time, but it was quality over quantity because I read Northwoods by Daniel Mason. And this is the book. I have been excited about this book ever since I first heard about it. It just sounded so good. And then, the cover, the whole thing, I just said, how could this possibly disappoint me? How it would be so disappointing to be disappointed. It would be like meta levels of disappointment. But I was not disappointed. And this book was really good. But let me just talk about this book a little bit. So this book it takes place over about 400 years, all centering around one small house in a forest in the woods in Massachusetts. And the story begins, I read a little excerpt last week, how the story begins in the 1600s with a pair of lovers who have escaped from a Puritan community. They're the ones that build the small cabin that is the first structure in the woods. And then over time, the house is expanded, and all kinds of different people and animals and ghosts and all kinds of things happen in and out of this house up to the present day and a little bit beyond. And it is so remarkable. You follow somebody for a while, and then that cuts off, and you go on, and the time picks up. It might be a little bit later on or a lot later on, and you're with somebody else and you're following their story. So you're not, it doesn't have that character driven kind of thing where you're really all wrapped up in a particular person, but you still manage to get caught up in these little small stories. And there are connections. They're not completely disconnected. There are sequential things or things that loop back to previous things. So a house that has been standing for hundreds of years leaves behind things, artifacts, evidence, stuff that maybe is found at a later time for someone else to puzzle over and becomes part of their narrative. And the narratives are in different formats. Some of it's just straight up regular first or third person narratives, and other things are in the forms of a journal entry, letter, a song, a poem, a piece from a true crime magazine. Some of the people that go through the house include, besides the Puritan lovers, we have there's a retired soldier in the 1800s that wants to start an apple orchard. There's a seance spiritualist person. There's ghosts. There's a con artist. There's a metal detector enthusiast, a true crime writer. All kinds of different people go there for different reasons. And so the story is really compelling, and you keep wanting to read and see what's going to happen next. There's also these little photos interspersed, and they sometimes have a meaning about what you just read or what is about to come. There could be, some of it's a nature photo, some of it's a little piece of ephemera of some sort or another that maybe suits the time period that you're reading about. But it does have some overarching themes. And so a couple of things that stood out to me that I marked, and I'm not going to read anything long or exhaustive here, but the guy that wants to start the apple orchard, he was a soldier of the French and Indian War, and his family thinks he's nuts. He's a widow with two small twin girls, and he decides that he wants to start an apple orchard. Everyone thinks he's weird because he's obsessed with apples. And he's the one who, he moves into this house, and he looks at the original little rustic cottage, and that's not going to be quite enough for his family. So he commissions somebody to build an addendum onto the house, and that becomes the yellow house that is featured throughout the story. And when he's talking to the carpenter, he says something that I think really resonates throughout this entire novel. And this is the passage. John Carpenter was the name of the carpenter. God works in odd ways, for he came from a family of cobblers. Puzzled was he over the cabin, and reckoned to reduce it to a garden wall, but I'd have none of that. History haunts him who does not honor it. And I think that idea comes through again and again throughout this novel. There's another concept that is spelled out late in the novel, and I'm not going to read the surrounding context because it might give something away, but just this one little idea, I think, permeates this whole book. And especially when you think about the passage of time that occurs during this book. She has found that the only way to understand the world as something other than a tale of loss is to see it as a tale of change. And the changes that happened to the people, to the land, to the forest, to the house over the centuries is what really makes this so deep and so good. Another thing that's interesting is how much nature writing is in this book, because I'm not really a nature reader. It's not that I dislike it, but it's just not something that I gravitate to. I know there's a lot of groups and events and things that have to do with nature writing, and I've never really drawn to those. It's not something that I think about a lot, but it is really important in this book. The woods are a character of their own. The flora and the fauna throughout the book, and sometimes even they are the main character. There's the panther, the catamount is very important to the story. Beetles and different types of trees and diseases that trees get, all those things that affect change, and how the earth is going to reclaim again and again despite what humans might do. There's nothing political or preachy in here, but the underlying message about the importance of nature and its preservation and its strength and trying to keep itself alive and reclaim and restart itself, that's an inescapable message. There's an entire passage at one point in the book about how a spore travels to the forest and starts a blight. And it reminded me a lot of the passage or the chapter in Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell that describes how a plague germ traveled to the town where Agnes and her children live, and then how Judith got sick. And so I thought about that book, and also that's another book where nature is really important with the character of Agnes, and I love that too. One of my favorite scenes in that book is when Agnes gives birth in the woods. And in fact, Maggie O'Farrell wrote a blurb on the back of this book. It doesn't remind me of any other book exactly, except there's a feeling partner, like an emotional partner, or I guess would it be, that the way I felt reading Northwoods was the way I felt when I read Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And I love that book. It's another book on my endless need to reread it list. But in that book, we swirled around between several narrators. It was a finite group, but you would get to the end of a piece and then you jump over to this other person. And there was a particular mythological story that was at the heart of it that they all had in common, and how that story had sustained them in their lives and come at different points, and the power of words and storytelling, and even librarians in that book. But so that feeling of reading that is how I felt when I read this book. So different plot, different themes, but just that feeling of circling and going to the next story and something holding it together was a similar feeling. But I really loved Northwoods. It was different than anything else I've read this year, but I loved it. So all of you who have said you want to read it, I do recommend it, and I hope you also love it. Now, what else is going on? This is a big old reready kind of weekend. Right now, I picked up last night Small Things Like These to read again. I've been saving it all year to read during the Christmas season. So I'm going to finish that today. It's very short. It is a beautiful book, and it's mainly about a man named Bill Furlong who lives in a small Irish village in the mid-'80s, but you would swear it was the 1950s. And he delivers coal all around town, so he sees a lot and he thinks a lot, and he's before he even discovers something disturbing, his mind is agitated, and he's got some things that he's approaching in his mind. But he comes across a difficult discovery when he delivers coal to the local convent. So I'll talk about it next week when I get to the end, but I love this book. And then this weekend, I also need to read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck for my band book club at the library. Now, this was not my favorite Steinbeck book when I read a bunch of them back in my, I guess, like late teens or kind of end of high school, early college kind of time. I went through a Steinbeck phase, and this one I didn't love. And this is a replacement also in the Remember December event, and it's in every category. I don't really remember it. I don't know how I feel about it. And I'm reading it in a different format to read with the group. My previous selection in that category has fallen through because I no longer have access to the graphic version of Anne of Green Gables because my library canceled Libby. So I'm reading this one. I was going to read it anyway for the discussion that's coming up on Wednesday. So anyway, I'll let you know how it hits this time around. And it's time, ho, 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 it's time for Catcher in the Rye, my semi-annual reading of Catcher in the Rye. It comes like Santa or the Grinch, and I am very excited to read this for the 9 millionth time. I think it is ahead of Pride and Prejudice for most times reread, and Jane Eyre. Those three are in contention for the crown, but I'm pretty sure this one's in the lead because I started reading it earlier in life and have not yet stopped. So I will once again regale you with my thoughts on Catcher in the Rye next week. So what have you been reading this week? Tell me all about it in the comments. And do you plan to read Northwoods? Please say yes. So that is it. I will see how long this is running, and I will put my tea footage in for sure and not delete it in the process of editing, please. And maybe the aquarium footage too. But other than that, I hope that you have a great weekend. So I will see you then. Bye-bye. Let's have a little make tea with me today and see what I got in my advent calendar. We're like halfway through. The flavors have been an interesting blend. The one calendar is mainly black, brisk morning teas, and then the other one is all different kinds of caffeinated teas and generally flavored teas. That's what Plum Deluxe specializes in. So let's see what I got today on the 14th. That's yesterday's tea. Oh, that was a weird one. I'll put in a photo. It was called Butterfly Effect, and it came out this peacock color. And then I didn't know this, but apparently if you put lemon in it, it turns to light purple. It's kind of a special effect tea, but I don't really want lemon in my tea anyway, so I was happy with it with the way it was, and it was surprisingly good because I don't really like green tea, and it was a green white blend, and it just kind of tasted like a peach herbal tea. So it was kind of outside my usual range, but I liked it, so it's okay. Okay, day 14 on my Yon Brew calendar. Classically Yorkshire, smooth, rich, and perfectly balanced, a broken leaf blend of tea from India, China, and Kenya, and it's Yorkshire breakfast. They think they're being tricky putting the name upside down, but I have skills. Made a little breakfast while I was waiting for the tea to boil. Now it's time to pour the tea. Okay, I can really smell that cranberry, so we'll see how this tastes after it finishes brewing. I'll give you a report. Um, it is, I think it does taste like grapefruit. Um, I think I would like it better as an iced tea, but I don't I don't not like it. It's just not my favorite. So I will drink it. The tea itself, I mean, it's good quality. It tastes the background tea is really good. I'm just not so sure about grapefruit in a hot tea, but you know, live and learn. The Advent calendar is full of adventures. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.